Hi, everybody. It's Mike from Here the Watchman. And on today's Watchman Report, I have an exciting guest, Mr. Josh Tolley. He's an author. He's a radio show host. He's been to, I think, 3 of the Here the Watchman conferences now, and he's going to be in Boise, Idaho this August 18th through the 23rd. And Josh, thank you for joining us today.
Oh, Mike, it's always great being here with you, and I'm so excited about Idaho. I was telling my listeners today, if you're going to get to Hear the Watchman, Idaho is the one to get to. So it's an exciting time, especially with what's going on in the world and around the world in a stellar sense. So it's going to be great.
Well, Josh, thank you so much for saying that. And what a great segue into what I want to talk about today for a few minutes with you. I know you're busy, but we want to just look at what is going on in the world today. I mean, we have Putin over in Russia, who has sent troops to the North Korean border, the Russian-North Korean border. We have ships off the coast, American gunboats. We have the things going off in Syria. We have Afghanistan and the mother of all bombs. What is your read on all this? What is really going on in the world today?
Okay, so there's a few things. One with the Chinese troops and the Russian troops going to their respective aspects of the North Korean border. We only have 3 options there. And when it comes to speculation, that's all we have. One is that they're putting troops there knowing that Trump is going to attack North Korea. Trump's giving them a heads up, giving them time to put their troops in position. And those troops are going to prevent people from migrating into China and Russia, respectively. So it's a way to keep out refugees. The second option is that China, Russia, and the U.S. have agreed in some sort of colossal deal-making skills that Trump has to collectively work against North Korea, and they're going to jointly take down that regime. Or the third option is Trump is going to attack North Korea, and Russia and China are going to move in to support the Communist Party in North Korea. So those are really the only 3 options. The really interesting aspect to all that, though, and I know that there's a lot of Trump supporters listening and watching to this, but the interesting aspect to this is we had a candidate, Trump, who said Barack Obama was foolish and stupid for telling the world what our military actions are going to be. Yet here we have Trump saying that, the USS Carl Vinson is near the peninsula and all that sort of stuff. One, I thought we weren't doing that. I thought that was foolish to say. 2, it wasn't. It was actually in the southern hemisphere at the time, so it was thousands of miles away from where he said it was, which either means he was bluffing, which sometimes presidents have to do, or he didn't really know where it was either. But either way, it's not a red flag, but it's a little bit of a yellow flag to make us look and say, hey, we need to be paying attention. As far as Syria goes, that is just turning into a colossal mess as well. And when you add Russia to the fray, we really have a situation where Russian troops are deployed in Syria. I know when we launched those airstrikes against that airport and did effectively nothing, that a lot of people were sitting there waiting for the news to break that Damascus was now laying in shambles, thinking that it was now the fulfillment of prophecy. And it's odd, but we're sitting here with that becoming a very real possibility at any moment. And, we're going to find out about it in retrospect. So that's something to be concerned about. But the thing that needs to be looked at, too, and it hasn't been getting a lot of attention, is President Erdogan, or should I say Sultan Erdogan, now in Turkey. This is a guy who, we predict what happened, by the way, on the Josh Tolley Show. This is a guy who is going for more and more colossal power, more absolute power. They're getting rid of the prime minister's position altogether. They're getting rid of judges that act as checks and balances for the executive branch. And they're even allowing him to run, in a sense, indefinitely. He's going to be president of Turkey until at least 2029 now, living in the largest modern presidential palace in the world. But he can go on to be president beyond that if the congressional approval is given to him. Well, we know that now that they don't have to hide party allegiances, that the congressional approval is in place, just a wink and a nod, and this guy can be Sultan until the day he dies. And it's odd that the American media has been missing this, but this is what he wanted. He said that he was going to be Sultan, and he would be Sultan in a very similar fashion to Queen Elizabeth being Queen of England. So it's really interesting what we're seeing in the world right now. A lot of this was predictable, some of it wasn't, but either way, as watchmen on the wall, it is time to sound the shofars because people better be getting ready.
Well, Josh, I mean, I agree with you 100%. And I guess, do you see everything that's breaking out in the world today? Do you see it in biblical terms? I mean, do you think that the Bible has told us that this would happen? False rumors of war, all the things that are going on today. Can you?
Well, here's the thing when it comes to wars and rumors of wars, and I talked about this at the last year of the Watchmen. When we see rumors of wars, it doesn't mean, a rumor as if Sally's over there starting a war, but don't tell anybody, it's a rumor. No, what rumor means in that context, it's kind of a mistranslation, or at least a misinterpretation. It means confusion of war. So we have wars and confusion of wars. And that's where this gets interesting, because that's exactly what we see happening right now. In Iraq, for example, we are working with Iran. In Syria, we're working against them. In Libya, we're working against the Muslim Brotherhood and Al-Qaeda. But in Egypt, we were working with them. In Iraq, we're working against the Taliban. It's crazy because we really don't know who the enemy is. We're working with Russia in Syria, at least until about 2 weeks ago, but then we're working against them in other places. And that's what it means. It's this confusion of war where nobody really knows who the enemy is. And that creates a very dangerous situation, and it's confusion, similar to, well, not at the same scale, but similar to what we saw at the Tower of Babel, where there's just this confusion. And politically, geopolitically, that's exactly what we're experiencing. Nobody knows who's a friend or a foe anymore. We're seeing countries split apart. We're seeing other countries come together. And it's definitely a time to at least be watching and be prepared. And as a watchman, here's the thing, Mike. The Antichrist, the devil, he doesn't know when this is all going down either. So there's always this perpetual readiness on his side of the enemy line too, because he's seeing things and saying, hey, wait a second, do I have to be ready to go now, or is now not the time? And we see this biblically when Yeshua, Jesus, is casting the demons out of those people, and they're like, wait a second, what are you doing here? It's not your time yet. So even they knew that, hey, wait a second, there is a time, we're watching for the time, and is it coming? And I think more now than any other point in history, we are at that point where we need to say, is this it? And should we be looking up? Because we have Russian troops, the sons of Rosh, in the Middle East. We have Turkey rebuilding the Ottoman Empire. We read in the Bible that it's Israel's enemy to the north. Well, when we look at a map on the news, we don't get which way north is. But if you actually take a map and draw a line from Jerusalem to the North Pole, what does it go through? It doesn't go through Moscow. It goes through Turkey. And Turkey right now is calling for a unified Islamic army. For hundreds of years, the Sunni and the Shiites have been opposed to each other because of their version of eschatology. But the Sultan of Turkey is now saying, hey, wait a second, we have a victory here, and we also have a common enemy. So while we're not going to agree on the eschatology of how our religion comes to a close, what we can agree on is it's not going to happen as long as the great Satan still exists. So let us combine our armed forces under the unified Islamic army, which, of course, he's proposing to lead. And then that would create an enemy like we've never seen before either. And then you tie into it the invasion into this country. We've had more people come into this country, even legally, in the past year than the rest of the world has allowed combined. And we are seeing an invasion of this country like no other also. So all of these things add up. And if it was one thing, we could say, well, I'm not sure. If it was 2 or 3 things, we could be like, well, that's a little suspicious, but still, I have to make it to my baseball game and be distracted by other things. But we're talking about dozens of things starting to come together, and that is enough for even the most vigilant skeptic to say, whoa, wait a second, we might be onto something here.
It's frightening, but there is hope, folks. There is hope, and that hope is in the Bible. The hope is turning to Jesus. The hope is turning your life over, repenting, getting out and joining us at these conferences and hearing the Word of God. That's the important thing right now. Now, I'm going to talk about something else with you, Josh, right now. We talked about it off air a little while ago. That's frightening to me, and that is the whole ARRON Hernandez thing that went on, and he was found, he hung himself apparently in jail. He was the former Patriots tight end, great football star, who was convicted of a murder. Then he was charged in another case, another murder case, and was acquitted of it, and was on schedule to be appealed for the first conviction, and was found hanging in his jail cell. And what really concerns me about this, folks, is he had, I believe it was John 16, written on his forehead. On his forehead. Now, how do you write something on your forehead before you hang yourself so everyone else can see? Now, there's a report out there that he may have been murdered. The thing is, why do we bring the Christian aspect into this? I don't know if the man was saved or not. It's not really relevant. It's just a sad state of affairs. What's your read on all this, Josh? Is this another attempt from mainstream media to disparage Christians?
Well, they take any opportunity to do that. I mean, we saw that with the Fresno shooter. The AP ran a story about how he was yelling, "God is great, God is great." And they didn't want to say what he actually said, which was Al Akbar, which the Western system wants to translate as the same. But by making it English words, they were trying to take away from the fact that it was a Muslim action. So we see the mainstream media take every advantage of disparaging Christians that they can. And the ARRON Hernandez thing is something similar. Now, we cannot say that this was a choir boy. I mean, he had gang ties. He was throwing up gang symbols while in court. So it's not like this was a choir boy by any means. But he was acquitted. And the other conviction that he has was on appeal. So what's interesting about this is when he died as a completely innocent man. There's a law that states that if you're going to be, if you're under appeal and you die, then you die innocent, because we haven't gotten to the end of that appeal yet. So from even a financial standpoint, there's some different maneuvers here that wouldn't have been here if that appeal wasn't in process. So it makes it a little bit curious, to be honest. And I don't know who did it. We don't have enough details, but it is curious because we know that there were gang ties. We know that there were police elements that have been corrupt in the past in that area. And we also know that it's extremely hard to write John 3:16 on your forehead backwards, upside down, and in a mirror. So it kind of makes you say, hey, wait a second. That's a little suspicious. And there was no lifestyle evidence to suggest that he was a devout Christian. So yeah, why did that even end up on his forehead? Did he find salvation moments before he killed himself? That might be something that somebody might say. But if that were true, if he really found salvation, if he really knew that regardless of his sins that the Father would forgive him and wash him in the blood of Jesus, Yeshua, then why would he hang himself? I mean, that would be when you become a repentant person, kind of like Paul in the Bible, who was persecuting and killing Christians. You become a repentant person and live for Jesus, not die for him. So yeah, there's a lot of questions surrounding that situation, and unfortunately, we're probably never going to see the real details in these things.
Yeah, I would agree, Josh. It's just I guess it's just a sad state of affairs. Now, listen, you you have come to the past Hear the Watchman conferences where you have knocked it out of the park. I mean, you had a standing room only crowd for a seminar you did that was sort of off the books in Dallas this year, and you brought the house down when you did your presentation there. What did you take away from Hear the Watchman Dallas this year, and what do you have upcoming to bring to Boise?
Well, you know, it's interesting. Even over and I was having a conversation with Pastor Paul Begley about this at the speakers dinner this time. And we said, even over the course of the past year or so, while we were going to these 3 Hear the Watchmen's, you can see a change happening in the culture around you. You know, it's fascinating. It's been happening now for about 3 years, but in the past year, it's really been speeding up, where we're having this falling away from false Christianity, which is a great thing. You know, the Bible tells us, come out of her, my people. You know, and that's people coming out of false worship, false religion, people who call themselves Christians, but worship the God of the Bible in the way the heathens have worshiped their gods. And we're seeing people leave false Christianity and move into a real position of study. You know, they're not just going to church on Sunday for 20 minutes and that's it. They're breaking out their Bibles. They're reading this thing. They're reading it alongside a concordance, understanding what it really means and says. And that is something that's just so encouraging. And at the same time, the enemy is rising up as well, going after every institution that we believe in and that we hold dear. So in the past Hear the Watchmen's, the first one I talked primarily about, well, actually, I didn't speak at the first one. I was just a guest. And then the second one I spoke in Knoxville and spoke primarily about business. This one, I kind of mixed it up a little bit, and I did how to live your faith, talked about how to study the Bible a little bit, how to put it actually into action, and then, of course, tied a business message onto it, too. And that business message is what's creating such a stir. I mean, not only at Hear the Watchman, but I just did a conference this past weekend. Same thing happened, man. It was a standing room only, bust the seams open. We had to shut the doors. Fire marshal was concerned we had way too many people in there. And people are really saying, Mike, they're saying, okay, I believe, but now what do I do? You know, what do I actually do to put this into my life, to make changes, to make action happen? And I think that's why my messages have been so popular lately, because that's what I teach, is I teach what do we do. So coming up for Boise, I'm going to teach a little bit about that, the what do we do part, but I think it's also time for me to start talking about my new book and my new project called Why They Don't Believe. And Why They Don't Believe is a new book that's coming out. It's being published by WorldNet Daily. And it talks about the real reason people don't believe in God. You know, we try to evangelize to our friends and our family, and we get this pushback and they don't believe. But I started thinking, why? Why wouldn't somebody believe? You know, we hear, well, it's science. Science is why they don't believe. Well, that's not really true, because the leading physicist in the country right now, the leading physicist who's not a believer, is saying that intelligent design at this point looks like a 50-50. So if even science is getting to the point where they're saying we can no longer deny that there's a design here, so we have to come up with either it's a hologram, it's a computer simulation, aliens built it, they can no longer deny something intelligent built it. So why don't people believe? And then, you know, well, God is mean. What sort of nice God would kill a bunch of kids in a bus accident or something? Well, again, that's completely irrelevant to why you don't believe. If there is a God, and you and I both believe that there is, but if there is a God, who are we to tell him what is and is not mean? Who are we to tell him what he can and cannot do? Our opinion of what he should be allowed to do is completely irrelevant when it comes to does he exist or not. But as you and I know as believers, it's not him killing kids. It's not him, oh, well, you know, I'm going to have a bus full of nuns die. What it is it's a consequence of the fallen state of man. Once we fell, he promised us that things are going to get chaotic now because I can't be here with you. Things are going to be vicious and things are going to die and decay and kill each other. But I'm coming back to save you. You know, you get this other argument that, well, if God was a loving God, why would he send people to hell? Well, here's something that people need to realize. God has never sent anybody to hell, ever. If somebody's in hell, they sent themselves, because there's been a free gift of salvation offered to everybody, absolutely free. So this idea that God sends people to hell is misplaced. We send ourselves to hell, and in retrospect, we're going to be saying, why didn't I take the free gift that he offered so nobody perished? No, not one. The day I looked at all these reasons and said, yeah, none of these are actually valid. None of those are valid reasons why somebody wouldn't believe in God. So I came up with 4 reasons, and 4 reasons alone, that actually keep people from believing. And that's what I'll be bringing up in Idaho. So if you have loved ones that you've wanted to bring to the truth of God's existence and the salvation of Jesus, then you're definitely going to get to Idaho, because we're going to break down all those lies that have been keeping people from believing for so long.
Well, amen, Josh. You are doing phenomenal work out there. And how can people find you?
Well, it's really easy. So they can just Google me. We're on, the radio show is on 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 10 to noon East Coast time. It airs all over the place. We have listeners in all 50 states, 160 countries. Contact your local radio station if it's not airing there. If it's not airing in your local market yet, we can deliver it to you via the internet. So we're on iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, iHeart. We're on YouTube. We're everywhere. People can go to joshtolley.com, JOSHTOLLEY.com. They can go there as well and find out everything we're up to. And people can get a copy of Evangelpreneur or Quit Your Job or Die or I Predict at any bookstore around the country. Just go there and request that as well. And we're doing TV stuff from time to time. I'm on television talking about politics and world events and all that sort of stuff. So just keep an eye out. But I do want to mention that we also have a sponsor, the Veterans Program, that we are going to be talking about in Boise, Idaho as well, because so many vets have a hard time getting back into the workforce. They're dealing with either post-traumatic stress disorder or maybe a disability, or they're so overqualified they can't find gainful employment. So we're helping a lot of them by starting their own businesses and teaching them how to do that. And people can be a part of that too and find out more at the website as well. But anyway, I know you got to run and everything. I just want to say thank you, Mike, so much for continually doing the Hear the Watchman. I'm telling you, brother, keep doing them. I want to still be at Hear the Watchman 5-10 years from now, because these are making a difference. And folks, get your friends and family there. I cannot tell you the change in lives that happen from these Hear the Watchman conferences. It's absolutely amazing. And Mike and Jeannie, I just thank both of you for what you're doing and answering the call that God has placed on your lives.
Well, God bless you, Josh, and thank you for everything that you're doing. Folks, you know, Jeannie and I were blessed. I mean, we were able to go and we went to Josh's wedding when he and Brittany got married in St. Charles. It was an amazing, amazing wedding. One of the most beautiful weddings that I have ever been to. And even my dog liked it, I guess. I mean, because she barked in the back. But I mean, it just, you need to follow Josh, and folks, if you can, please go to hearthewatchmen.com, hearthewatchmen.com. Get hooked up, get dialed in, get yourself to one of these conferences, because you would not believe what happens. I mean, we baptized 153 people in Dallas. Man. And you know, it's funny, but 153, according to Pastor Paul, is the exact number of fish that Peter caught with the nets when Jesus told him to go back out and fish. So, I mean, wild.
Are you serious?
I am serious. And wild stuff happens at these conferences, folks. So get there, be a part of it. Until the next time, God bless each and every one of you. God bless you, Josh. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to be on our show.
Thank you, sir.
Everybody, until the next time, God bless each and every one of you. We'll see you again here on the Watchman Report.